A relatively quiet week ahead, but what will be the key market drivers as we look at the week ahead? Political risk high on the agenda, US elections, the UK Brexit talks continue with the EU summit due today. What will be the outcome? The man who knows and will help us through this is Bob Mason of FX Empire. This is your week ahead. Hello, Bob, and thank you for joining us today. Let's dive straight in, shall we? It promises to be a relatively quiet week in the week ahead, but what are the main market drivers that we should be looking out for?
It is a quieter week ahead on the economic data front. I mean, for the US dollar, the key stats of the week, the weekly jobless claims on Thursday, and then October premium private sector PMIs on Friday. Focus, obviously the weekly jobless claims, that's key, and then service sector activity for October. How's the start of the fourth quarter looking? For the Eurozone, consumer confidence figures out of Germany and the Eurozone in the early part of the week, and then premium private sector PMIs at the end of the week, Germany, France, and the Eurozone. What impact is this new spike in new COVID-19 cases having on service sector activity in particular? So that will be key at the end of the week. So any week numbers, and expect that uncertainty that the ECB had talked about to possibly materialize and really weigh on the euro. For the pound, we've got a relatively busy week. Got inflation figures, retail sales figures, and the private sector PMIs. Expect retail sales and the PMI service sector in particular to be the key drivers at the end of the week. Obviously, the BOE is ready to go into negative territory. So any particularly dire numbers with these shutdowns that are happening across Britain, so that is pressure for the pound. And then obviously you've got Brexit as well. At the time of this recording, the EU summit is yet to begin. This is Thursday, so obviously that's going to be material in terms of setting the tone for the pound going into next week.
So it seems that the pound is the one to look out for next week with a busy schedule and key stats due out. But how about commodity currencies? What should we be looking out for specifically with the loonie and the Aussie dollar?
For the Aussie dollar, very quiet week next week. There are no material stats for the markets to consider, actually. So that leaves the RBA meeting minutes at the beginning of the week to be the main area of focus. We've heard the chatter of a further rate cut. Consumer confidence, got a boost in last week's numbers for October. That was driven by fiscal support and expectations of further monetary policy easing. So do the minutes relay that? Obviously, that could really pull back the Aussie dollar. For the Kiwi dollar, we've got inflation, trade figures, and business confidence numbers to be, key drivers for the Kiwi dollar. Obviously, RBA looking to cut. Will the RBNZ also follow suit? So these numbers will be material, and obviously expect influence from economic data out of China as well. For the loonie, got retail sales figures and inflation figures at the end of the week. Those will be the key drivers as well. So there's plenty to consider for the commodities. And when you consider what's coming out of China next week, and obviously COVID-19 and concerns over, another global lockdown, we could see, the commodity currencies come under pressure.
So it seems quiet on the commodities front as well for the week ahead. But what about our Asian giants, China and Japan? What can we expect from them?
For the Chinese one and broader market sentiment, actually, it's a big start to the week. We've got third quarter GDP numbers, industrial production, retail sales, and unemployment numbers to consider out of China at the start of the week. Obviously, GDP numbers are going to be material. Is the economy recovering as we're expecting? And, what are the fixed asset investment, industrial production, retail sales, and unemployment figures like? Obviously, the Chinese government's expecting inward-driven economic recovery, and we're seeing that reflected in demand from overseas and so forth. So what are these numbers like? And that really will set the tone for the week. Out of Japan, we've got trade data and inflation figures. Obviously, Japan's economy remains under the hammer, and that's expected to continue if these COVID-19 new cases continue to increase and lockdown measures get reintroduced. So, there's a few things to consider in the week ahead, and expect the numbers out of China to really set the tone in terms of market risk sentiment.
And lastly, to finish up on geopolitical risk, the US presidential debate will take place for the second time this week. Trump is losing ground. Will that affect the markets? Also, the Brexit talks, EU summit coming up. What can we expect on that front?
Yeah, on the geopolitical risk front, let's go to the US election first. We got the second live televised debate. The original second one was cancelled last week. So that's going to garner plenty of interest. Trump continues to lag Biden in the polls, and the markets are expecting a clean sweep in terms of the blue wave that's going to take both houses, and that's supported risk sentiment, and the hopes of further fiscal stimulus in the new year with the Democrats able to deliver without the hindrance of the Republicans. So that's going to be a key area of focus, and expect Trump to really rattle some drums in the final week of campaigning. And then on the Brexit front, as I mentioned earlier at the time of the recordings, we've got the EU summit kicking off on Thursday later today. That's going to be material. Will Boris Johnson be walking away, or will he allow negotiations to go through till November? I guess that really hinges on, French President Macron, and if he's continuing to persist on this demand for unrelented access to UK fisheries, despite the EU and the UK parting ways. So that's going to be material for the pound. So a number of things to consider, but ultimately I'd really be looking at COVID-19, and are we going to see another spike from where we were last week, and are we going to see further lockdown measures to contain the virus?
Well, that's all for today, Bob. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll see you again next time. That was The Week Ahead with Bob Mason of FX Empire. But in the meantime, keep up to date with all the latest developments on all the market situations by following us on our social media outlets.